Greetings, everyone. So, I wanted to share some information that I've gathered. I have been studying narcissism, I don't know, maybe 7 years. I kept thinking it was 10 years, but maybe 7 years or so. And I recently have been studying cults and cultism, not occult, cult. And I found a lot of similarities. And I could go on. I might do another video. I just find all of this very interesting. So I thought you guys might like to hear the observations that I have made. So, and there's a few books that I'm reading. One that I'm reading right now is Unculted. And I've read several books on narcissism, which right now I can't think of the names. But I've, gone on YouTube and just done a lot of research. So anyhow, the first thing that I've noticed that is a huge comparison is in cults, they want people isolated. So like what was the name of that New York cult? I think his name was Ray. Yeah, he wound up isolating all of these people, these beautiful young people that were going to college. Initially, he love bombed them like crazy, and then he wound up isolating all of them in his apartment. It was real crazy. And it makes people easier to control. So someone might try to lure you way into the country in the middle of nowhere. A lot of narcissistic relationships, a person does that. Usually a male narcissist, but it could also be a female narcissist. They like you away from your friends and your family so they can control you. And really, if you look into cults, there's so many cults, but that is like rule number one, you got to isolate. The other one that I noticed was us versus them. So it all, especially in cults, I've been really delving deep into Scientology. Wow, what an evil, evil, evil cult that is. And not to say there's a lot of good people in Scientology. I don't mean every Scientologist and all the teachings are bad. It's just what's going on in the cult is diabolical. So, and also too, what I had seen about Jehovah's Witness, they do that too. It's always us versus them. So they have to make anyone who questions anything that they do, actually even a person within the church or the cult, whichever it is, whether it's a family cult or a church cult, you are not allowed to ask any questions that go against the narrative. Like the book I'm reading now, Unculted, Daniel, I don't know how to say her last name. She was in the cult, Milshavik or something like that. I can't pronounce her name. But she was explaining how they made it... Oh, yeah, I had to think about that. So they made the people that were not in their cult, they called them systemites. And in Scientology, if a person either is excommunicated or disconnected, which means they've, for various reasons, have either left the cult or been labeled an SP, labeled an enemy. Sound familiar, like what happened in that World War II, which we're not allowed to talk about. That happened there as well. But it happens within narcissistic relationships too. I also can think of a lot of workplaces that I was in that did that. I remember a lot of places saying, we're family here. If you hear that, you should really take note of that. And also, what was the other? I had watched WeWorks. You should look into that, you guys. It's very interesting. The other thing that they're huge on, and everybody in any kind of religion, regardless of what religion you're in, we all know about the shaming. That is just primary. You've got to shame someone, make them feel like they're such a bad person for something they did. A lot of times it's just all you did was ask a question. Well, why is this? Why is this way? Or something. Now, in Scientology, they take it to the next level. And anyways, I'm not going to talk only on Scientology. I'm just talking about various cults here. So, I mean, I was listening to one of the YouTube, this gal's name is Shalise, and she had a lot of people on her show that were talking about how they had been shamed once they left their particular religion or cult, and they are not allowed to communicate with the family members that are still in the cult, which leads to isolation, depression, sadness, suicidal ideation. And the people that are the leaders of these cults don't care because they don't want to see the cult come apart, and they don't care about people. So, of course, that can happen in a narcissistic relationship. Why did you embarrass me? Like, you just look so stupid. How could you say that in front of my family? Like, you are such an idiot. You're such a moron. And in essence, when people do that, they're usually just projecting their garbage onto you. Okay. So the next one. Shunning, excommunicating, or disconnection. I've kind of talked about that. That is the one, that is their biggest blackmailing, bargaining chip. Like, if they can shun people, I like the word shunning. If they can shun people that have left the group or have questioned the group, that keeps their false narrative in place, and then they make the person that has either been disconnected or shunned the enemy. Well, I mean, how better are you going to keep that false narrative of, we can rape children and that in place unless you shun people? And I'm not saying, I'm just saying a lot of these cults, the SAs of children and the RAPE of children is just rampant. Smear campaign. I would say that Scientology, they're genius at the smear campaign because they have so much money. But that just goes to any cult, It could be that, and oftentimes what I've noticed is these cults have a lot of the police in their pocket. Not all of them. I just want to say, not all of them. But they'll get enough key people in their pockets so they can just do whatever they want. And they do. And that's why we're seeing so much criminal behavior coming out, and people, ex-victims, or not ex-victims, but victims, people that they have hurt, are coming out in droves talking about what they've gone through. So we all know what happens in narcissistic relationships, whether it is a former workplace, whether it is a marriage that broke up, whether it was a so-called friend, whatever the situation is, they are absolutely, I would say, genius in a negative way as to creating a smear campaign against the one that they see causing problems for them. So whether it's their ex-wife, which what I understand is that the courts are clogged with divorce cases because of these more narcissistic, psychopathic type, especially the wealthier ones. And, the smear campaign continues. Sometimes they're even able to smear your name in public, which we see all the time. Me personally, I take things with 2 grains of salt or 1 grain of salt. If I don't see it, I don't believe it. Facts. Financial abuse. Every single culty church that I have investigated, and I've only investigated lightly on some of these, like the Nexium cult, that one, you talk about taking financial abuse to the max. But of course, the ones that I had looked into, I don't know Jehovah's Witness so much, but I do know that Scientology does it. A lot of these Christian cults, money, money, money. We need more money, and you've got to give all your money. Well, meanwhile, the parishioners are living in complete dire poverty, don't know where their next meal's coming from, and the people at the top of the pyramid, so to speak, are living in luxury, while all these in poverty people are living, hand to mouth, and sometimes not even eating or eating well. Yes, in narcissistic relationships, we know financial abuse can occur. I remember reading of one instance in which this woman, she was an intern, a medical doctor intern, and she got involved with a doctor. And I forget exactly, they had a specialty. I can't remember what type of specialty. And I think it was like supposedly a romantic relationship, but he got her living with him. And then even though she was making like a fraction of the amount of money that he was, she was paying way more of the bills, way more of the rent. And yeah, so anyways, that's just one example of financial abuse that we could go on and on about that. I highly recommend you guys look into these network marketing. I was in a few of those, but I didn't last long, and I could see why now. But there's a lot of that going on, and I figured that out real quick. That's why I didn't stay. So criminal behavior. We can see in the recent headlines with Danny Masterson and some other, I won't say all the celebrities, but we can see that the criminal behavior is rampant. And ideally, a lot of these organizations are crumbling because of the fact of all of the SA abuse that they have covered up, which is a crime, failing mandatory reporting that they're not doing, and calling themselves a church when they're really not a church, etc. Lots of those things going on. So RAPING is a big one, physical violence, and also calling people volunteers and working them almost to death, and in some cases working them to death. Also lots of extreme accidents happening in these cults. Lots of, and I'll get into that more later, with the forced labor, but even of children. Next one is grandiosity. So if you look at these cult leaders, the one thing they have in common, well, and I've seen some of them that I really consider psychopaths, although every psychopath is a narcissist, but psychopaths have zero empathy, which I forgot to put on my list. Anyways, grandiosity. So they make themselves like they're always better than the rest. They're always more superior to other people. They're wealthier, they're prettier, they're a better dancer. In the Nexium cult, Keith Raniere called himself the smartest man in the world, I believe. And then later, come to find out, everyone realized that that was not true. I do think he was smart, though. I think his IQ was high, but I don't know that he's the smartest man in the world. So they paint this picture, and so did the L. Ron Hubbard. And I don't want to get too deep into these leaders, because then people start flagging my video because they get all haterish. But there are a lot of these cult leaders that were basically just lying through their teeth about who they were. I can say one, L. Ron Hubbard, because I'm a veteran, so I can speak on this. L. Ron Hubbard made everyone think he's this great Navy veteran, and it was not even close to what he was telling people. So grandiosity, we get the drift with that one, can also happen in narcissistic relationships. I've seen a lot of that in a lot of workplaces that I had, as well as one of my family members who was more somatic narcissist, which means somatic is like they got to have the Louis handbag, and no shade on people who do that, but I'm just saying that type of narcissism, they got to have the the Lamborghini and the Porsche, and they got the better cars, and because inside they're so inadequate about themselves, they've got to show everyone how great they are, and they do it with pompous grandiosity. Whatever it is, they could be an intellectual, narcissist, whatever it is. Oh, I did put, okay, so I covered that. No empathy. So, one thing also that I've learned in my lifetime experience is that you have what is called like a cognitive empathy. So, this is my interpretation of cognitive empathy. There might be other people that interpret it a different way, but what I interpret cognitive empathy, and I believe a lot of the NXIVM cult members noticed this with Keith Raniere, is that they have this ability, because they really don't have empathy, but they've studied people like on movies, television shows, and in real life that truly have empathy. They study them and then they copy their what is that called? Facial expressions, micro expressions. So they're so able to mirror that people actually think they have empathy, but deep inside they don't give a shit about you. And they're very good at it. So some just don't have empathy and don't care if you see it. But some try to hide it. And clearly in a narcissistic relationship, we're going to see that. Especially a lot of narcissistic type people want to put this big grand show on in front of everyone, how great they are. They save elephants, they help veterans, they do all these great things in public. And meanwhile, when they go home, they beat their wife, or they're terrible to their children, or whatever. Forced labor. So, forced labor is pretty rampant in all the cults I've studied, so I don't want to just peg one of them. You can go, there's a lot of really, really good, extremely good shows on various, like Prime Amazon, Netflix, and such. The WeWorks, I highly recommend that. What was the other one? There was another one I just watched. I can't remember what it's called, but it was, they really got busted. And that also has to do with forced labor. Even though people are allegedly getting like these checks, in the end, like they get a lot of labor for like nothing. There was another network marketing company. It's just, I'm forgetting the name of it, but it had to do with mostly like young women, some single women, some married, that were able to support themselves by selling these really, like what I would call knockoff clothes, like printed leggings, cute little clothes. And anyways, it all pretty much kind of is crumbling to the end now. But I personally feel like there was a lot of forced labor, even though they did get paychecks. And that's something I had seen in network marketing. That's why I didn't stick around. So the forced labor, I believe, I think that it does happen in Mormonism. I'm not sure. I do know that like some of the Amish and some of these various, and I'm not saying everyone, so don't get all upset, everyone, but in some of these places, people are, doing 18, 19 hours of work and with no pay and living these really miserable, sad lives. Raniere was really good with that. And also, too, I think that goes to show, and I'm a veteran, whoop whoop, but I also think that that's the sleep deprivation. It's much easier to control and insert new mind programs into people when you have them exhausted. So much easier to control them. And what I've seen, too, is they'll assert more and more control over a person, the more freedoms and the more things that they take away. And they do these things, I call that more coercive control. They'll take things away from them little by little so that they're almost all the way dependent on being in the cult. That's like a big, huge thing. But sleep deprivation, forced labor, huge. And they definitely go together. And literally, they're doing this to children. And that is not okay in my book. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with children doing chores and things. But I mean, when you're talking about hardcore manual labor, and then sometimes they even have these children working at like little factories or restaurants in which they're making all kinds of money. It's disgusting. It's disgusting. There was one, I can't think of the gentleman's name, but he left the Jehovah's Witnesses, and he had an experience himself where he was doing basically forced manual labor and witnessed a young girl whom they refused to take to the hospital die of, I forgot what it was she had, but it was really awful. Really awful. Okay. Control of information. If anybody has been in a narcissistic or a rather manipulative, abusive relationship, to include workplaces, what they love to do, he or she or they, control the information. And in the cult situation, and really even in an abusive relationship, whether it's a friendship or workplace or romantic, controlling the information is how they exert control. So, for example, the one thing I can think of, like in a more personal relationship, you're in an abusive marriage, and let's say I'm the one in the abusive marriage, and my friend, my girlfriend, my lady friend, is telling me, look, like, what he's doing to you is abusive, like, I'm worried about you, you look tired, you look thin, you don't look like you're getting any sleep, and you're not yourself, you're not the person I remember that you were, blah, blah, blah. What the abuser will turn around and do is say, I told you not to hang around that bitch. She's no good for you. She's jealous of us. She's trying to tear us apart. Don't you see what she's doing? So that's an example of one, coercive control, and also control of information. Cults thrive and depend on controlling the information. So if you dare to ask a question about scripture or the policies of the religion or cult that you're in, how dare you ask a question? And then you'll be put into the thought, what do they call it? Thought stopping, thought control camp, regardless whatever it is. The I think in Scientology it's RPF, which allegedly it's like closed down. Yeah, right. Or you might be told, you know, you don't do this one thing and you don't have a job. Or what's the other one? So if you dare to question anything that's going on in Scientology, and you don't give in to all their control tactics, because their control tactics are actually written into their policies. So that is how strict and stringent the control is. And once people are in, it's hard to see it because you're in it, and especially if you're exhausted. And we all know how media goes, and I'm not going to go too deep with that one. I don't even know how long this phone will record, so we'll see. Okay, my favorite one, preying on vulnerable people. So the only way that a parasite can get what they need in what might be called narcissistic supply, energy vampirism, energy loosh, whatever it is, they absolutely have to prey on vulnerable people, because vulnerable people are much easier to control. I remember when I was a young woman and I had gone to Pentecostal church, and I hopped around to a few different religions. Anyways, I just remember young people coming in crying, and they would just pounce all over that, because the young person was going through a problem. It was much easier to control them. And you see that you see that in every single cult there is. And you can go you can go watch Shalise. What's her name? Shalise? I can't think of her YouTube. Anyways, I'll do some more videos and then I'll tell you guys where to watch. Okay. Narcissism, we already know, preying on vulnerable people. So, you know, I've heard a lot of women or men, mostly women, that said once they got, let's say they broke up with their boyfriend, it was just like a normal breakup and they were sad. A more narcissistic preying person will just jump in, pounce. They will pounce because they already know that this person is vulnerable. And in some cases, they can kind of gauge this person is more susceptible to be abused. And I like what Ollie Matthews, I used to watch a lot of his videos back in the day when his channel was called Narcissistic Resistance. He's changed the name a few times. But I liked what he said, you know, they shit test people. So, like, they want to prey on vulnerable people because would you want somebody that asks questions, is very confident in themselves, and knows something funny's going on to come into either your organization or into the fold of your relationship where you know you can't control a person like that? No. They want someone more vulnerable. They're down on their luck, they're sad, they're broke, they don't have family. That's a big one. And cult leaders thrive on people either of lesser means, they have broken families, they went through SA abuse, whatever it is. Another one, do not allow questions. You are not allowed to ask a question. Sound familiar by the last 3 years? What do I know, though? So that can go in a relationship as well. I've seen a lot of workplaces do that. I was forever in trouble in a lot of places that I worked. Policies decriminalizing criminal behavior. We see that in Scientology. Also, I had seen that in the Jehovah's Witness, where I think they're changing it, I'm not sure, but they had this rule, the two witness rule, where, and I had seen a lot of women that had come out and said they were SA'd as children, very young children, and they came forward at various times. And because there's a two-witness rule in Jehovah's Witness, it just allowed them to cover it up, which I think birds of a feather flock together. But in other words, this young little girl, beautiful little girl with blonde curls, went to one of the elders and said, hey, you know, so-and-so is SAing me. And instead of her getting love and support, the man started screaming at her and yelling at her, don't you ever say that again. So, you know, re-victimizing someone who had already been victimized. Let's see. Well, I would say, like, in a more narcissistic relationship, you might not have policies so much, but it's more like a rule. Like, you need to be home from work within 20 minutes. If you're not home in 20 minutes, you know, I'm going to berate you, maybe even hit you, call you names all day, you know, walking on eggshells. So I would say policies and rules are kind of the same, but policies just strengthen it more for more abuse. Thought stopping. So this is something I just learned about recently. People that had left Scientology talked about it, as well as some of the more religious cults. And again, learning from Daniela from the Unculted book, and also her Instagram videos. So in other words, I never even knew what this was, and it really, really kind of threw me. So if you, I'm trying to think of an example. Okay. You tell someone in your cult that you have been SA'd, you're 6 or 7 years old, and they tell you, why did you bring it in? Like, what did you do to bring this in? So that stops your thought. What is another one I could think of? Okay, one workplace, I was thinking about this, where you're highly encouraged to volunteer every single weekend, so you would have no life whatsoever, no sleep, no nothing. Another, you know, that's sleep deprivation as well, is you say something like, oh, I have plans or I need to do this. And then the boss will say something like, well, what could be more important than helping uh, mothers in need or whatever it is? And then so you're not allowed to think, oh, I need to have time to myself. I deserve to have, nutritious food or whatever it is. They stop your thoughts immediately so that you're not allowed. Oh boy. Wow, let's see, how long is this? Ooh, this is the longest video I made. I don't even know if it's going to go up. Let's see. This is kind of an experiment. So I only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. About 6 more. Okay, so guilting and shaming. So guilting is a huge one. And I personally dealt with this in my personal life with one of my relatives. Every time I would bring something up or think something or talk about something, oh, why'd you say that, so-and-so? Like as if what I'm saying is like a bad thing, like I'm not allowed to think freely or think well of myself. I had one relative who made fun of my college degree and the work that I was doing at the time. Oh no, that's not as much guilting, that's more like shaming. But I'm thinking about guilting. So guilting is huge. Just be really, really wary when people start to try to make you feel guilty. And I actually recently fell for all this guilting and I feel foolish. But I won't allow that. I don't think I'll allow that to happen to me again. But when people are saying, oh, you can't do this because it's bad for you, you can't do this because it's bad for you, all the time, really watch that because it's a manipulative tactic. So, I mean, you guys, what am I going to say in these cults? They're always guilting all the time. Every day of your life. Oh, you ate that food. That's, against God. Or, you looked at somebody, a girl's foot, and that's evil. Crazy stuff like that. Shaming. I've already covered that. Okay, I put these two together because I really feel like they do work hand in hand. I personally just recently fell for this love bombing, and I feel really, like a fool, but, you live and you learn. So what I've noticed, whether it's the network marketing, whether it's the churchy cults, or what's the other one I could think of? I mean, it could just be any kind of cult, network marketing, churchy cult, self-awareness. I'm seeing a lot of things in these like so-called gurus now that I'm just like, I don't know anymore. But love bombing, that's how they get you. I fell for that when I was a young woman in one of the churches, the not Jehovah's, but the Pentecostal church that I was in. They make you all happy. Like, you're like, oh, I'm in a family. Oh, it's so great. And I think sometimes it's willingly and knowingly that they're doing it. And then sometimes they're not doing it knowingly because, and also too, Sarah of the Nexium cult had talked about that a lot. Like, you want to do something good for people, for humanity. Scientologists that are no longer in talk about that, want to, help the world, clear the planet. What was the other one? Network marketing, we're going to help people get healthy, it's going to be great. The other one, the WeWorks, I don't know, I can't remember the hook was with that one, but they did do a lot of love bombing. And then the other one I was talking about with the women selling the clothing, I can't think of the name of it. Their thing was like, we're going to empower women, so they can be financially independent. And, meanwhile, they're working 90 hours, they never see their family and such. So that would be that, but I wanted to hook that in with obligation. So obligation is another huge tactic. In narcissism, you have fear, obligation, and guilt that go together all the time. Sound like the last 3 years, but what do I know? Fear, obligation, and guilt. So love bombing and obligation go very hand in hand. And I remember, I believe it was Sarah of Nexium, how she explained how when she got into the Nexium, it was like this self-help. And they got people in like within 3 or 4 days, and they were just like, you have to sell like 10 packages. And, if you don't do that, you might as well leave, and all this crazy stuff. And then, that's kind of like how you get hooked. I'm sorry. I mean, it could be cooked, I guess. And we know that can be in a narcissistic relationship. If you don't marry me, I don't know what I'll do. Meanwhile, they're trying to get after your money. Or it could be, oh my God, like they just meet you, right? Like you've only known them 2 weeks. You went on one date or something. And they're like, oh my God, I'm going to get kicked out of my house. Like I have to stay with you. Like I have to. And then they get themselves in your house and you're like, oh my God, what a mess, and then they don't want to leave. That could happen with a fake roommate too. Repetition, okay? So I've studied mind control for many years, and I don't even know nearly as much as some people, but I know a lot. And I am a veteran, was in the military. I started studying this, I don't know, a while ago. But repetition, last 3 years, repetition, they keep repeating the same thing over and over and over and over and over and over and over. And in a sense, it's kind of like an affirmation in a way. And an affirmation can work in a positive way. But if somebody's repeating like the same thing over and over and over, let's see, World War II, World War II, World War II. If they repeat it over and over and over and over and over and over and over, it gets implanted into your subconscious mind if you allow it. And then the next thing you know, your belief system is changing, and you kind of didn't even know, how it happened. Happens in relationships too. I'm trying to think of an example. Well, I can think of one relationship that I was in, stress past tense. He always would tell me I wouldn't be ish without him. Again and again and again. Which actually, when I look back, I don't think I really believed him inside. But it was kind of like a threatening thing that made me feel scared. Okay, the biggest one that I can think of right now is attempt to control the narrative. So the biggest and wealthiest cults that have a religious exemption that shouldn't have religious exemption, they have ways of doing smear campaigns online. They harass people. They hire private investigators. To me, those aren't even private investigators. They ain't nothing but bullies, with a badge. Or with a fake badge to top it off. And maybe some of them are decent, I don't know. But to go around and follow people, that's not a good person. And then attempting to control the narrative, they like to get on, they like to create these propaganda type videos and tell their members, this is what we are, fear the enemy like the Systemites, or the SPs, or whatever they call people, WOGs, sinners, the fallen, whatever they call people. But the only way that they can continue with the membership or abusing someone in a narcissistic abusive relationship is they have to control the narrative. The minute that they stop, they are unable to control the narrative. They usually go into what I call like a narcissistic rage or a narcissistic, collapse. And cults do this, like as organizations, workplaces do this. I've seen it again and again. And personal relationships, same thing. Okay, next one, commitment. You have to commit. And I've seen this with the network marketing. I've seen this. I've seen this with the churchy cults. I have seen this with, what's the other one? Nexium was really huge with this. He was like a master at getting people's money. And that cult in New York, same thing. I think it was called Ray's Cult or something. He was a master at getting at their money. Commitment. Also, too, like what I noticed in some of these groups, and I had experienced that in the past myself, whether it was in a college or in the military, is they're always giving you all these certificates and making you feel all warm and fuzzy inside. Workplaces do that too. And not all of it is bad, but what I've noticed is that they use that as a control tactic. And then you think you're going somewhere, you're doing something, and then in the end, like if you do get out of it, you realize, oh wow, it was all like just a big lie. Especially with the, what am I trying to say, network marketing. They literally like lock you in a room for like 3 days, some of these places. And then they work on you for 3 days straight, and then you're all, you're signing away your money. What's the gal's name? I don't know how to say her name. Yanya Lalik? Yeah, check her out. She's really good. She has some really good information on that. She used to be in a cult. And then last one, and I want to wrap this up, get some water, conformity. It is absolutely essential to conform to what they tell you to conform to. And literally, what I've noticed too is uniforms are a huge thing with these morons, these fools, because when they make people put these goofy uniforms on, they just look so bad, but they don't even realize it. You look like a clown. But and I'm not talking about the military. I'm just saying, like people that use these fake uniforms, you just look like a clown. But meanwhile, like people are innocent. They don't understand, But conformity is huge. So conformity might be in dressing the certain way. You can't wear lipstick. Remember in that Pentecostal church that I had gone to, can't wear lipstick or you're a harlot. Can't wear earrings or you're a harlot. Can't wear pants or you're a harlot. So then in the end, they get all these things to make people think, oh wow, I'm apart from the general public, and I'm superior and I'm better, and they're evil. It's part of like breaking people apart from the general population. So that's it. Hopefully this was helpful, and I don't even know if it's going to upload. We'll see. Peace.